It started with a text from my manager around 3 p.m. Don't forget, tonight's the holiday mixer. Everyone's expected to make an appearance. I was already exhausted from a week of back-to-back meetings and spreadsheets that wouldn't balance themselves. The last thing I wanted was to go make small talk with a bunch of people pretending to like each other just long enough to refill their glasses and complain about the quarterly review. But I went. Because Carrie had been nagging me about showing up more, and I don't just mean physically. She said I'd been distant lately, tired, boring. I thought maybe this would help. So I shaved, threw on my one good blazer, and showed up at the rooftop bar in downtown Nashville where the event was being held. It was cold up there. One of those nights where the wind slices through your clothes and makes your eyes sting. Fairy lights were strung across the railing, and a small jazz band was tucked in the corner under a heat lamp. People were already gathered in clusters, drinks in hand, trying to look warm and important. And that's when I saw her. She was standing by the bar, back to me, head tilted in laughter. Not the fake polite kind people do in offices, but a real open laugh. Her shoulders moved with it. She leaned in close to someone I didn't recognize. He was tall, clean-cut, probably early 30s, wearing a dark blue suit that looked tailored. He had his hand across the small of her back, not in an accidental way. It was possessive, like it had been there before and would be again. He leaned in, whispered something. She tilted her head toward him and laughed again. I stood there, frozen, watching this strange little bubble they had created. One where I didn't exist. I should have walked away. I should have turned around, taken the elevator back down, and gone home. But I didn't. I walked up to the bar like I hadn't just watched my wife forget who I was for a solid minute. She didn't notice me until I was almost beside her. When she did, her face flickered, just for a moment. A flash of surprise, maybe guilt. But it vanished so fast I wasn't sure I hadn't imagined it. She smiled like everything was normal. "Oh," she said, touching my arm lightly. "I didn't know you were coming." Her voice was high, too casual, like she was caught off guard and trying to sound natural. "I told you I was coming." She blinked. "Right? Sorry, it's just been such a long week. I forgot." Then she turned to the man beside her and said, "Dan, this is my husband, Dan." So he had a name. He smiled and reached out to shake my hand. "Good to meet you, man. I've heard a lot about you." I took his hand, firm but brief. "Funny. I've never heard of you." Carrie let out an awkward laugh, and Dan took the hint. "I'm gonna grab a drink. Nice meeting you." And just like that, he slid away into the crowd. I turned to Carrie. "That him?" She blinked, too wide-eyed. "What do you mean?" "The guy you were just talking to, Dan." "Oh, yeah. He's a project coordinator, new guy on the West team. Super friendly, a little flirty, but harmless. He was just being funny." "Funny?" I repeated. "So funny you forgot I existed for a minute?" She rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed now. "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Overreact. Read into nothing. We were just talking. You always get like this when I'm around people you don't know. It's exhausting." I bit down on my response. The words formed at the back of my throat, but I swallowed them. I didn't want to make a scene. Not here. Not in front of her coworkers. The rest of the night was a blur. Carrie was distant. She stayed on the opposite side of the room, always just a little out of reach. I watched her talk to people, smile, laugh, but none of it was for me. At one point, I caught her looking at her phone with a strange little smile. Then she tucked it away quickly when she saw me watching. When I finally got her attention to ask if she wanted to leave, she said she'd Uber home. "You can go if you want," she said flatly, sipping her wine without looking at me. So I left. And as I walked to my car in the freezing night, I kept replaying that moment at the bar. The way Dan's hand lingered on her back. The way she leaned into it like she belonged there. The way her face changed when she saw me, like she'd just been caught in the middle of something and was trying to decide how to spin it. I got home around 11 and sat in the living room with the lights off, just staring at the wall. When she finally came home, it was past midnight. She didn't say anything at first, just went straight upstairs. Eventually, I heard the sound of running water, her nightly ritual. I waited, half hoping she'd come down and explain everything without me asking. She didn't. The next morning, I asked her again about Dan. I didn't accuse her, I just asked. She laughed like the idea was ridiculous. He's just a coworker. You seriously think something's going on because he touched my back? I saw the way you looked at him. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're being paranoid. Then she left for work, leaving behind the faint scent of her new perfume. Something citrusy and sharp. Something I hadn't smelled before. I stood there for a long time after the door closed, wondering if maybe I really was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. There's a look people have when they're around someone they don't want to be caught wanting. It's subtle. A flicker in the eyes, a pause in their smile, a lean of the body. I saw it on her face when she was with him. And I saw something else when she looked at me. Inconvenience. Not guilt. Not remorse. Just annoyance. That night didn't destroy anything by itself. But it was the crack in the ice. The quiet confirmation that something was off. That whatever was between us, the thing we used to have, had shifted. And once you notice the crack, you can't unsee it. After that party, something in me changed. Or maybe it didn't change. Maybe I just started paying attention. It's a strange thing, how your brain suddenly replays moments from the past once you're given the slightest reason to doubt someone. Little details that didn't mean anything at the time start to feel like clues you were too trusting to see. And when I say details, I'm not talking about anything dramatic, nothing explosive. That would have made it easier. This was something quieter, slower, like standing knee-deep in the ocean and realizing the tides pulled you farther out than you thought. Started with her phone. She used to leave it lying around the house without a second thought. Face up, sound on. If it buzzed, she'd glance at it or ask me to read it for her while she was cooking. That was just normal for us. We didn't hide things. But after that night on the rooftop, I noticed she'd started flipping it over. Always face down. Always silent. Once or twice, I saw her swipe away a notification before I could even glance in its direction. I asked her about it once, and she laughed like I was being ridiculous. I get distracted too easily, she said. I'm trying to unplug more when I'm home. It sounded like a healthy habit. Rational, even. If I hadn't seen her reaction when I asked, I might have believed it. Then there were the work nights. Carrie had always worked hard. I respected that about her. She was sharp, good at what she did, and she didn't take shortcuts. But this was different. She started coming home later. Always with a reason, of course. System upgrades, client emergencies, team meetings that just had to be after hours. Some nights it was almost 10 p.m. before she walked through the door. And when she did, she looked different. She used to come home tired, hair tied up, shoes in hand, ready to melt into the couch beside me. Now she came home with perfect eyeliner, freshly applied lipstick, and a perfume that didn't match the quiet scent she used to wear. It was bolder, stronger, like citrus and expensive silence. I made a joke about it once. You're starting to dress better for work than you ever did for me. She rolled her eyes and brushed past me. Maybe if you noticed more often, I would. That one stuck with me. Our conversations became shorter, sharper, like we were both choosing our words too carefully, or not carefully enough. She'd scroll through her phone while we watched TV, tapping out texts with the faintest of smiles. If I asked what was funny, she'd say it was a meme from a friend. Never named the friend. Never offered to show me. And maybe that's when it really hit me. She had started curating what parts of her life I was allowed to see. The turning point came 2 weeks after the party. I was lying in bed around 2 a.m. I'd fallen asleep early, but something woke me up. A sound? Maybe, or just that sixth sense you get when you know something's off. I reached across the bed. She wasn't there. I waited a minute, thinking maybe she'd gone to get water. When she didn't come back, I got up and walked through the house, quiet as I could. I found her in the living room, sitting in the dark. She was curled up in the corner of the couch, phone in hand, screen glowing softly. She didn't see me at first. When she did, she jumped, locked the phone instantly like it was muscle memory. I couldn't sleep, she said, voice shaky but trying to sound casual. Didn't want to wake you. I nodded slowly. Who were you talking to? She blinked. No one. I was just scrolling. I didn't argue. I just walked back to the bedroom and got into bed. But sleep didn't come. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or realization. And suddenly, I started remembering everything. All the quick errands that turned into hours. The work trips that came out of nowhere. The way she laughed at her phone more than she laughed at anything I said lately. The weirdest part? She was more cheerful online than she was with me. Carrie barely looked up from her phone when we were together. But somehow she found the energy to post pictures from team dinners and off-site events. Perfect lighting, cocktails. Someone else's hand always just barely visible in the corner of the frame. I started noticing how little I was part of her life. Her online presence didn't include me anymore. No mentions, no photos, no signs of a relationship at all. Once, I asked if she wanted to go out for dinner. Something simple, just the two of us. She hesitated like I'd asked her to climb a mountain. Said she was swamped, maybe next week. The next night, she posted a story from a restaurant. With a caption, Work Family Red Heart #grind never stops. She wasn't tagged, but someone else was. Dan. Same guy from the party. His arm was just barely in the sh*T, resting across the back of the booth. It was the first time I felt something crack open in my chest. Not anger, not yet, just this cold, empty awareness that something was unraveling, and I was the last one to know. Still, I didn't accuse her. I kept it inside. Instead, I started observing more carefully. I stopped trying to get her attention and started watching from the background, like a stranger in my own house. I noticed how she always left the room to take certain calls. How her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore when she said, I love you, out of habit. How her kisses felt like obligation. And the way she avoided my gaze when we crossed paths in the hallway. Like she was afraid I could see what she didn't want to admit. There was a moment, a small one, that I'll never forget. We were standing in the kitchen, both getting coffee before work. No fighting, no tension. Just silence. She looked up at me. Not at me really, through me. And I realized then, her eyes were already gone. It's hard to explain, but once you've loved someone long enough, you can tell when they've left the building. Even if their body is still standing in front of you. I stared at her for a long second and asked, quietly, Are you happy? She blinked, like I'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. Then she smiled too quickly. Of course I am. Don't be weird. She grabbed her mug, kissed my cheek, and left for work. And I stood there, alone in the kitchen, holding a full cup of coffee I no longer wanted. That day, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid I already had. I wasn't planning on coming home early. My flight from Atlanta was supposed to land late Saturday night, but a last-minute cancellation shifted everything around. I figured I'd just surprise Carrie. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe that if she saw me walk through the door unexpectedly, she'd smile. Maybe even light up the way she used to. Maybe she'd wrap her arms around me like she used to, back when things were still easy. But that's not what happened. It was around 5:30 in the evening when I pulled into our driveway. Her car was already there, lights on inside. From the outside, nothing looked unusual. Same porch light flickering from the wind. Same worn-out welcome mat. But something felt off, like the house knew I wasn't supposed to be there yet. I stepped inside quietly. The first thing I noticed was a jacket, not mine, draped over the back of a kitchen chair. Dark blue, slim cut, familiar. It was the same one Dan had been wearing at the rooftop party. For a second, I froze. I literally stood in the hallway with my keys still in hand, heartbeat roaring in my ears. I stared at that jacket like it was some cursed object. It shouldn't have been there. There was no reason for it to be there. And yet, there it was. I moved through the house on instinct. The kitchen smelled like wine and citrus. There was a wine bottle open on the counter. Our good bottle, the one we'd been saving for a special night. 2 glasses beside it. One empty, the other half full. still warm to the touch. It took everything in me not to throw it against the wall. I made my way to the bedroom. The bed was unmade. Barely, like someone had gotten up in a rush. The pillows had impressions in them that didn't match how I left them. There was a necklace on the nightstand I didn't recognize. I stepped into the bathroom. 2 toothbrushes. One mine, one not. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back at me. There was this moment, this sickening pause, where part of me still tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had a friend over. Maybe it was innocent. But even as the thoughts formed, I felt them collapse. I wasn't that naive anymore. I walked back out to the living room. Her laptop was open on the couch. Screen still lit. No password prompt. I hesitated, then sat down and tapped the trackpad. Her inbox was open, not even minimized, as if she didn't think she needed to hide anything anymore. I shouldn't have read it. I know that, but I did. I scrolled through the emails and messages, dozens of them between her and Dan. Not just casual banter. These were planned meetups. Inside jokes. My name popping up again and again. They were talking about me like I was some distant obstacle they had to work around. One message, sent just the night before. Read. He has no clue. I could walk in wearing your jacket and he'd still believe whatever excuse I give him. Another. Tonight's perfect. He's out of town, and I need something that actually feels real for once. There were photos too. Selfies in hotel rooms. Her curled against him, messy sheets in the background. And then there were voice notes. I clicked one without thinking. Her voice came through the speaker, low and breathless. You make me feel alive in a way he hasn't in years. That was it. That was the moment everything broke. I closed the laptop slowly, as if it would make the words inside disappear. But they didn't. They were carved into me now, loud and permanent. I sat there for I don't know how long. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe more. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I just felt hollow. The kind of hollow you don't come back from. I heard the garage door open. Footsteps. She walked in humming to herself. That same tune she always hummed when she thought no one was listening. She stopped dead when she saw me. For a second, she looked confused. Like she couldn't quite process that I was sitting there. Then her eyes darted to the kitchen. The jacket. The wine. To the laptop still glowing on the coffee table. Her face went pale. You're home early, she said, almost too casually. Looks like I'm not the only one, I replied. A long silence stretched between us. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tried again. It's not what you think. I let out a breath that sounded like a laugh but felt like a wound. That's the best you've got? She took a step forward. Just let me explain. I shook my head. I don't need you to explain anything. I saw it. All of it. Her face crumpled slightly, but only for a moment. Then she straightened, composed herself. Look, she said, voice cooler now. This is complicated. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I stared at her, amazed at how quickly she'd shifted from panic to control. You weren't trying to hurt me? I asked. You planned hotel meetups. You called me clueless. You used my travel schedule to coordinate cheating. And you're standing here saying it's not about hurting me? She didn't respond. How long? I asked, not because I didn't already know, but because I wanted to hear her say it. She looked down. A few months. Was it just him? She hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. I nodded slowly. Right? She stepped closer. I'm sorry. Okay? I got lost. I felt disconnected, and Dan, he just showed up at the wrong time. I didn't plan for this to happen. You didn't plan for it? I repeated, voice rising. You coordinated dates. You laughed about me behind my back. That's not a mistake. That's a decision you made every single day. Silence again. She looked at me like I was some problem she needed to solve. Finally, she said, we can talk about this. Work through it. But not like this. You're angry. You're not thinking straight. No, I said, my voice steady now. For the first time, I'm thinking clearly. I picked up my keys, walked past her without touching her. She didn't stop me, not physically, Not emotionally. Just stood there, arms crossed, eyes glassy, like she was already thinking about how to spin this into something salvageable. But there was nothing left to salvage. I walked out into the cold air, got into my car, and just sat there. Didn't start the engine. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just breathed. And with every breath, the version of my life I thought I had crumbled a little more. Not in some big dramatic collapse, but in small, quiet pieces. The kind you can't put back together. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly through the city, past empty gas stations, diners glowing under cheap fluorescent lights, and storefronts with closed signs flicked over like nobody had time for second chances. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts louder. I kept seeing her face, not crying, not panicked, just calculating. Even when I stood there holding the truth in front of her, she didn't break. She didn't scream or plead or confess some hidden agony that would make it all make sense. She just managed the situation. It hit me in pieces. This wasn't a collapse for her. It was an inconvenience. I ended up crashing at a cheap hotel near the airport. Carpet smelled like cigarettes. Heat barely worked. I didn't sleep much. Mostly just stared at the water-stained ceiling and tried to picture what I'd do next. When I finally came back home the next morning, I expected her to be gone, or to have packed, or, at the very least, to have left a note, something resembling a human response. But she was there, sitting at the kitchen table, fully dressed, coffee in hand, laptop open beside her, like it was any other Tuesday. She looked up when I walked in, her face unreadable. "You look tired," she said. I didn't respond, just walked past her and dropped my keys on the counter. "Do you want to talk?" she asked, like we hadn't already passed that point. I sat down across from her and waited. She took a sip of coffee, then closed her laptop with a soft click. "Look, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but we need to handle this like adults." "Like adults?" I repeated. "Yes, calmly, rationally. This doesn't need to become a disaster." I stared at her for a long second. "A disaster?" I said. "You mean it doesn't need to look like a disaster?" She tilted her head, like she didn't follow. But I knew she did. "I'm saying," I continued, "you're not worried about what this did to me. You're worried about what people will think it did." "That's not fair," she said quietly. "No? Because last night you weren't apologizing. You weren't even shocked. You were strategizing." She sat back, eyes narrowing. "Do you want to ruin both our lives over this?" I almost laughed. "You already ruined it. I'm just reacting." She crossed her arms. "We don't need to involve other people. We don't need to make this worse than it is." "And what exactly is it, Carrie?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a pattern. Not a mistake. Not a one-time thing. A long, deliberate lie. So help me understand, what is it you think I should do here? Smile through it? Pretend I imagined the toothbrush? The emails? The voice messages where you called me a placeholder?" Her face twitched, just a little. "I was angry when I said those things," she replied. "I was venting. You don't understand the pressure I've been under." "No," I said, standing up. "I think I finally do." I went to the bedroom and started packing. Not in a rage. Not haphazardly. Just methodically. Shirts, socks, toiletries. My passport. The watch my dad gave me. She followed me in. "Seriously?" she said. "You're just leaving?" I didn't look at her. "What would you do if you were me?" She didn't answer. I zipped the suitcase. "Mark, please," she said, softer now. "Let's not blow up everything. We can talk. We can try therapy. No one else has to know." I turned to her. "And there it is." She frowned. "What?" "The thing you care about most. No one else has to know. That's what you're worried about. Not losing me. Not the betrayal. Just the optics. The fallout. Your image." "That's not true," she snapped. "You didn't even try to deny it," I said. "You didn't defend yourself. You didn't ask for forgiveness. You didn't even act surprised when I said Dan's name. You knew exactly what I saw, what I found, and your first instinct was to contain it. She went quiet. Tell me something, I asked. If I had never found out, how long would it have gone on? She looked at the floor. I don't know. But it wasn't ending, was it? She shook her head. Probably not. I nodded. At least we're being honest now. You don't have to leave, she whispered. We can take space. You can sleep in the guest room. Just don't do anything stupid. Stupid? I said slowly. You mean don't tell anyone. Don't embarrass you. Don't take away your leverage at work. Right? She didn't answer. I grabbed my suitcase and started for the door. She followed. What are you going to do? She asked. I turned back. I'm going to rebuild my life without someone who treated me like a liability. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm finally being clear. I paused, one hand on the door. And just so we're clear, if you try to spin this, if you try to make me the villain, if you so much as suggest I imagined any of this, I will send those emails and recordings to your boss, your parents, and Dan's fiancé. Her face drained of color. You wouldn't, she said. I don't want to, I replied. But I will. So think carefully before you try to gaslight your way out of this. She didn't speak. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. There was no slamming, no shouting, just the quiet click of a lock and the sound of my suitcase wheels on the pavement. And just like that, I was gone. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I'd stay, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Not in that house, not in that story she was still trying to control. What I remember most from that moment wasn't the pain. It was the silence. How quickly everything stopped. No begging. No dramatic monologue. No promises of change. She just watched me leave. Because deep down, she wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of losing the narrative. I didn't vanish in the way people imagine when they say they're leaving everything behind. I didn't fly to another country. I didn't torch my old life or change my name. I just stopped playing the part one was assigned in her version of the story. I turned off my phone that first night, found a short-term rental across town, a furnished apartment above an old bookstore. It smelled like dust and coffee beans. The shower whined every time I turned it on, and the bed creaked if I so much as breathed too hard. But it was quiet, honest. It didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. I liked that. Carrie didn't hear from me. Not because I was trying to punish her. I just didn't see the point of giving her access to me anymore. No replies. No explanations. No arguments. I figured if she could treat me like a background character, I could return the favor. Within 24 hours, the first message came through. Then another. Then 10 more. Can we talk? Please don't do this. It doesn't have to end like this. They came in waves. Some calm, some desperate, some angry. When I didn't respond, her tone shifted. You're acting childish. You owe me a conversation. I deserve closure too. Closure. That word made me laugh out loud in the middle of the empty apartment. She'd spent months giving someone else the version of herself I barely recognized. The laughter, the attention, the charm. But now she wanted me to give her peace? I didn't block her. I didn't delete her number. I just left it all there. Messages piling up like unopened mail from a place I no longer lived. After 3 days, she started calling. First thing in the morning. Then again in the afternoon. Then late at night. Then came the emails. She kept the subject lines polite, businesslike, like she was trying to pretend we were co-workers navigating a minor disagreement. Let's resolve this before it escalates. We should control the messaging together. Please respond before I have to involve other people. And that's when I realized something important. Carrie wasn't unraveling because I left. She was unraveling because I refused to engage. Silence, for someone like her, was worse than rage. Worse than tears. Because it gave her nothing to work with. No role to play. No scene to direct. I'd cut the lights on the stage, and she was left talking to herself in the dark. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I wasn't seeking revenge. I just didn't have anything left to say. Instead, I focused on living in small, quiet ways. I got coffee at a shop down the street every morning. The barista learned my name by day 3. I walked to the park and sat by the lake, just watching the ripples. I listened to old music I hadn't touched in years. I read books again. I even started writing down my thoughts. Not in some dramatic memoir kind of way, just simple pages filled with questions I didn't need answers to. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version Carrie had shaped. Not the husband. Not the fixer. Just me. Meanwhile, she kept pushing. After a week, she showed up at my office. I told the front desk not to let anyone back without an appointment. But she talked her way through. Of course she did. I was mid-email when she appeared in the doorway. Same coat. Same heels. Same expression. Halfway between hurt and determined. "Can we please talk?" she asked. I leaned back in my chair. "I'm working." "Then take 5 minutes," she said, stepping inside like she still had permission. I motioned to the chair across from me. She sat down like it hurt her. "I don't know what you're trying to do," she began. "But this isn't healthy. You're ghosting me." "I'm removing myself from a toxic situation," I replied. "You're punishing me." I shrugged. If silence feels like punishment, maybe that says something. Her face tightened. "We've been together for almost 7 years, Mark. Don't act like that means nothing." "I'm not acting like it meant nothing," I said. "I'm acting like it meant something. That's the difference." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I continued, calm but sharp. "You made choices. Repeatedly. You kept secrets. Lied. And then, when it fell apart, your first instinct was to control the fallout, not fix the damage. Not even apologize. Just preserve the image." "That's not fair," she whispered. "It's the truth." She went quiet. Then, softly, "So what happens now?" I stood. "Now? Nothing. We stop. I move on. You do whatever you want to do." She stared at me. "That's it." I nodded. "That's it." When she finally left, she didn't say goodbye. Just stood, looked at me for one long second like she wanted to remember something. Maybe who I used to be, and walked out. She didn't come back. But the messages kept coming. Less frequent. More frantic. Then, eventually, just sad. "You're really going to let this end like nothing? I don't even know who you are anymore. You win." But there was nothing to